You say that we are now live.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
hello everybody. Yes, I'm here with Krista. And I don't know if this any way working. Let's see. Okay, someone join. I don't know. I hope that you can you listen to us? I'm not sure. I hope that you can listen him at one point. Okay. Let's see if I put it like this so that I don't bother the people behind me. Okay. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey.
All right, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. If you need room, there's still some more seats. Feel free to move around if you need to, make yourselves comfortable. This is a pretty good crowd for a cosplaying panel. Working with Foam 101.
I think this is Thrawn's playing.
Oh, okay, there we go. Thrawn's playing.
Thrawn's playing.
Oh, that'd be me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, the fan base young.
Are you trying to get a video of the whole room?
Yeah, try.
Bring your phone.
Oh my gosh.
Is it forward facing or this way? Oh, there it is. Wow, look at that. Everybody wave. I'm over here now. There we go. It's the doctor. Hello, doctor.
Not me.
You?
Pokemon phone.
No.
I think we're finished here. Here you go. Oh, no, I was wrong. We're still on you.
Stop it.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
That story. Tell that story to me up here.
Just mentioning the lovely young lady here brought gifts and notes and artwork from fans that she's in contact with all over the world. And it's amazing stuff. I wrote some books, that's all.
Now you made an awesome character.
It's really humbling.
There's a guy back there like, I was going to go to his table, but now the bar's been raised. So.
We do not expect gifts. We expect smiling faces. We expect old books, new books, well-loved books, figures, stories of how, got them through deployment or high school or something, or just, hi, nice to meet you. We were really quite easy.
Well, let's go ahead and get started so that we've got plenty of time. The way this is going to work, I guess first of all I should introduce, first of all, before even all that, how many of you, this is your first convention in like 18 months? You haven't been anywhere but this one. How's it going so far? Everybody having a good time?
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Well, this is, of course, the Thrawn Legacy panel. Our guest today, as you know, is the famous, infamous, whatever we want to say, author of the Star Wars books, Mr. Timothy Zahn. And this is going to be a pretty open discussion. If you have questions, don't sit there with your hand raised because your arm's going to get tired. Just raise your hand. If I see you, I'll kind of nod. I'll go, yeah, okay. And then we'll come back to you and we'll get your questions in. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. So this is your time with the author. So we want, because I can sit here, I can talk all day. We have 30 years of content I can talk to you about. But I want to make this your panel, your time with the author. So please, any questions you have, don't hesitate to ask the questions right away. So before we get started, I'll go to you with my first question, I promise. Before we get started though, give me a second. Let's talk just a little bit about, when you throw on a word like legacy in a fictional context, there's some weight to it. But when we talk about it in a historic, a publishing and industry-wide context, 30 years of living with the character Thrawn, tell us a little bit about the weight of that legacy on you as an author.
It means that, well, it has been a great ride doing Star Wars books. It's great that they have brought Thrawn into full canon and allowed me to do more books. Thrawn in the Empire, Thrawn in the Chiss Ascendancy. I mean, the only real weight is I've set the bar for myself. I've got to at least make that bar each new book. Because there are too many authors who have reached the pinnacle or the peak of their ability and then started to slide. I want to stop one book before that. But I think I should be okay because I think a lot of the problem with some of the classic authors, Clarke, Heinlein, Asimov, was at some point they got to the stage where everybody was afraid to tell them this needs tightening up.
Right.
Nobody among the editors, my agent, my wife, certainly not our son, holds me in such high regard that they will not tell me when something needs to be fixed. Right. So fortunately, I've got a crowd of people who are watching out for that. So hopefully that means I will be able to keep doing good books that people want to read and are happy when they're done. Okay, that was worth the hours and the money I put into it. Because that's my job, right, is to be entertaining, maybe thought-provoking, give you a story that satisfies by the end.
You mentioned full canon. What has that journey been like to you to go from, well, this is non-canon, this is back in canon, we're going to start using this character in other media? We'll kind of talk about how that has gone.
When the decision was announced, the sale to Disney, and the decision was made by Lucasfilm and or Disney to put all of what was the expanded universe into Legends format, a lot of people were surprised, a lot of people were unhappy. We were flying over the country from Tampa to Portland when that news broke, so we landed in Portland, let's get our car and let's check Facebook, what sale? But it was something we always, writing Star Wars, always knew could happen. Bill Slavicsek had a nice analogy. He said, we're all being allowed to play in George Lucas's driveway, those of us doing novels, stories, gaming stuff. If when he backs his truck out, if he runs over some of our stuff, we have no cause to complain. I was lucky in that most of my stuff was near the edge of the driveway, and when the prequels came out, and then the Clone Wars and such, I got a little dinged on occasion, but I was usually able to talk my way out of it. But we always knew that our stuff could be erased with a stroke of a pen whenever Lucas or his successors decide to do so. So if you're not willing to put up with that risk, you don't sign the contract, you do some other book instead. So I was, okay, this is interesting, this is new, let's putting new blood into this, let's hope this works out well. I think I did a post a month or so afterwards about, look, I've written 10 books, Star Wars books, 19, I think, short stories and novelettes, somewhere around 1.5 million words, something like that. I've had a lot of time to play in the Star Wars universe. If they never want me to do another one, it's been a great journey, I've had fun, and I'm satisfied. So, a couple more years went by, my agent would occasionally poke the editor at Del Rey, as we're starting this new series of books, Tim's available, can do more Star Wars. And the answer is always, yeah, we know. So, okay, I guess they don't want me to do any more Star Wars. So, okay, 2015, got back of it, talking Pablo Hidalgo at a convention a couple of us were saying, we're available to do more Star Wars books, and Papa was saying, yeah, I know. I got an email from Lucasfilm. I'd like you to come down to Lucasfilm in San Francisco and talk about Star Wars. Okay, talk about Star Wars. You can do this on the phone. And I couldn't make it. We couldn't make it till mid-November, just scheduling wise. And I was getting notes along the way, fine-tuning things. And Dave Filoni's going to be there. He's blocked 2 hours out for you. Dave Filoni's doing Rebels. He doesn't have 2 hours to sit and chat about Star Wars. Then I land in San Francisco. I'm picking up my luggage, checking ebook or email one more time. And final note. Oh, by the way, there's going to be a film crew at your meeting. Is that going to be a problem? Film crew. No problem. Got to Lucasfilm the next day. The story editor, Jen Heddle, took me to lunch in the commissary, which I was way too nervous to really eat anything. Got to the conference room. I was the first one there. Jen disappeared back to her office. It's a nice rectangular table like this one. Here is the head. You can tell because the water and the snackage is back here. So this is the head of the table. I'm going to sit over here. Film crew is already there. They're pointing this direction. So, okay, I'm going to sit over here. A couple people come in. Pablo comes in. Some more story group people. And it's always, hi, I'm so-and-so, big fan. So about the third one of these, okay, I'm not in trouble. And then Leland Shee comes in, the master of the holocron, the guy who knows everything about Star Wars, an amazing memory and ability to put everything together. And he says hi. He said, you know what's going on? He said, oh, yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Someday I'm going to know something you don't know. I'm not going to tell you either. He says, oh, come here. Move over to this chair. There's the film crew. Okay. And finally, Dave Filoni and it was Carrie Hart came in, sat down at the head of the table, and told me that the news is that Thrawn is going to be a major villain in seasons 3 and possibly 4 of Rebels. And I don't exactly remember what I said. I think it was something like the internet is going to melt. So they took me down to the bullpen where they're doing Rebels. I got to see some of the stuff in progress, put to the people. And then they took me back upstairs where 4 of us met, and they said, we'd like you to do Thrawn's backstory that came out to be Thrawn leading up to season 3 of Rebels, where he shows up. By the way, by this point, I've signed 2 non-disclosure agreements. The first one that gets you past the front desk, and the other one getting down into the bullpen for Rebels. You have to understand these non-disclosure agreements are pretty tight. First one, I think, mentioned your firstborn. The second one says something about your dominant kidney. So we talked about the book, agreed that I was going to do Thrawn's backstory and Dorinda Price, the governor of Laval, since she's showing up for the first time. She's mentioned in seasons 1 and 2, but not appearing until season 3. So we got all that agreement. And then we had to vamp for 8 months because the announcement was going to be made at Star Wars Celebration Europe in London. And we could not breathe. I say we, my wife and son, because they're my brain trust basically in this sort of thing. We had to vamp for 8 months. And I learned how politicians do things. You do not answer the question being asked in such a way that they think you answered it. And fortunately, it was the same answer had always been given. Are you going to do more Star Wars books? And the answer was always, as it had been for two years, if they want me to do more Star Wars books, they know where to find me. Which is an absolutely true statement, but it does not answer the question. So, appearance in Rebels, or the announcement at London, everybody was hyped. He comes into season 3 of Rebels, and then 3 days before the celebration 2017, I guess it was, in Orlando, that started Thursday, that Tuesday, Thrawn was published, the book, and they made 2,500 or so special editions, and Barnes & Noble will have a special edition, and those were selling out so fast. They were, every evening they were scrambling to try to get more books. They really didn't know how to do a limited edition with that much interest at that point. They vastly underestimated how much interest, and I can understand it. You look at the suits upstairs, okay, we say this is a convention or a celebration exclusive. If they don't all sell, we have to pull the rest of them. So let's go on the conservative side. And they got caught completely pants down, unawares, unexpectedly. I think it was like the second day of celebrations, that would have been Friday, my editor told me we're going back for a second printing already.
Wow. 3 days in.
3 days in. So it doesn't mean they're all gone. It means that the warehouse has gotten to a level where it kicks in a second printing. I think Thrawn, and they've kept the hardcover of that and most of the other, my recent books, in hardcovers, even after the paperback came out. I think Thrawn is up to 12 or 13 printings in hardcover.
Wow.
I think this convinced the people at Lucasfilm, yeah, Thrawn's popular.
We may have something here.
So they contracted for another book, which became Thrawn Alliances, and the third one, Treason. And then Celebration Chicago, was that 2 years ago? 19? My editor brought us to breakfast, and he said, since the period after Rebels is locked in Dave Filoni's basement, because what happens to Thrawn and Ezra, we can't do anything until Dave Filoni decides what he wants to do with it, which we hopefully will see some of in we assume he's going to show up in the Ahsoka series. So instead we'd like to go back a few years in time, Thrawn coming through the ranks of the Chiss Ascendancy. I thought, okay, this sounds like it'd be a lot of fun, and since everything that was done with the Ascendancy after me was now Legends, they told me I can basically build the Chiss culture from the ground up. I don't have to follow any of the things that I thought, and that's kind of weird and not at all what the Chiss would be doing, but and we're talking to Tom at breakfast, and my thought is, so is Lucasfilm going to go for this? And as he's explaining, he said, oh, by the way, Lucasfilm's already signed off on this. Oh, you guys had this discussion already, you've agreed, and now you're telling me, great. We don't have to argue anybody. Okay, when do I start? So first book, Chaos Rising, came out September of last year. September 1st. Greater Good came out in April, and Lesser Evil's coming out in November. So a trilogy within 15 months, which is not usually done. So what's next? We will have to, for anything more Thrawn, we're going to have to see what Filoni does and what slack I've got in that assumed that 9-year gap. A lot of stories can be told, but I need to know what his end point is and what they'll allow me to do. But until then, there are some other possibilities we've been discussing. I just sent the copy-edited version of Lesser Evil back to my editor, so that's essentially put to bed. So it's on track for that November release. So one of the more intriguing thoughts, something to kind of tread water while we wait for Filoni.
Are we allowed?
Well, this is something.
Okay,
This is something.
I don't want to get NDAs. Okay, good.
This is pure speculation, but one of the more intriguing possibilities is Pablo Hidalgo was a champion of this some years ago. I don't know if he's still interested, but it would be get some of the Star Wars artists to each do an alien painting, and then I write Thrawn's analysis of it.
Oh, wow.
So the problem with this one, of course, it's, well, full color plates in there, and you have to herd a bunch of artists together, which is like cats, only, caffeinated cats. But that's a possibility. There are 2 or 3 others, which I won't get into because, again, speculation. But that's the most intriguing one. The coffee table book, the War of Art or something like that. Yeah. So that's where matters stand right now. Is we're finishing up the Ascendancy trilogy and now going to discuss what other options we've got.
That's great. Let's take a few questions. I'm going over here first. Yes, go ahead. I put you on. I'll get you next, third.
I had to change my question several times.
All right.
So I landed on this one. One of the things I like about the character Thrawn, as you just mentioned, is the analysis of art. What brought you to that idea? That's something that you don't see a whole lot of.
I wish I had a really good story.
Make one up.
It was a Tuesday. It just showed up as I was developing the character. I'd already decided he's a tactical, strategic genius, so he's going to lead by loyalty, not fear or manipulation like Vader and the Emperor did. So I'm developing the character, and somewhere in that process I thought, let's do something kind of a flip of a Jedi thing. Jedi can use the Force, but nobody else really understands how they do that, but they use it. Let's do Thrawn analyzing cultures, their art, which no one else can do, but it works for him. So it was kind of a lead-off of a Jedi thing. Someone suggested some years later that he might do better to read the mythology of an alien race. The problem with that is unless he knows the language, he has to read in translation. And that's going to buffer and fog the whole thing. The art is just there. No interpretation done before Thrawn gets to it. So I think it works well, and it's been a lot of fun to play with in Thrawn, or Chaos Rising, where he's explaining it to Aralani, and they go into a stick fighting example. That was my editor's idea, actually, but it worked out well. So the artwork it just kind of developed along the way. But I'm sure it was a Tuesday.
We had a second question back here, yes.
Given the fact that in Dave Malone's Rebels, if you got the opportunity, how would you write Thrawn coming back?
I think the question was, what would I do to bring Thrawn back after 9 years of vanishing? It seems to me that what we need to do is to set up some kind of a reluctant buddy thing between Thrawn and Ezra.
Yes.
And the way I see it is Thrawn persuades Ezra there are worse things out there even than the Empire. The Empire has a whole bunch of rebels fighting against it. This is something you and you alone can help us defeat. Yeah. So if Thrawn can persuade Ezra to work with him, reluctantly, if not probably, but I think that would be the basis for the stories. Think back to one of my best favorite examples of this is the TV show White Collar, where you have, how many are familiar with White Collar? Okay, con man, forger, released to FBI handling to assist them in white-collar crimes of forging and that sort of thing. And they don't really trust each other, but they work well together. Peter, the FBI agent, and Neil Caffrey, the other. So I think it would be something of that same flavor, that Ezra would never be quite trusting Thrawn, looking for what angle is he playing, what is he trying to get me to do that I shouldn't be doing, while at the same time Thrawn is, I need your assistance, how do I get this from you without making you bolt? Right. So there's a lot of interesting byplay, and of course you could bring in people like Eli Vanto to talk to Ezra. Yes, I was an Imperial. Now I'm working with these guys because I recognize there are more dangerous things out here as well. So there's a whole bunch of interesting dynamics you can put together, and I just fingers crossed they'll let me do some of that.
We had a third question right here, and then I'll go around.
So this is kind of a two-part question, because you mentioned being very lucky to be able to play in George Lucas's playground. So first part of the question is, what made you want to play in the Star Wars universe? And two, was Thrawn already conceived, or was that something that came afterwards?
A lot of Star Wars writers now will tell you that writing Star Wars books is a dream come true. It was not a dream come true for me simply because I never would have dared to even dream such a thing was possible. What happened was that in 1988, Lou Aronica at Bantam Spectra contacted Lucasfilm, suggested that since George wasn't doing anything more with Star Wars, that Bantam pick up the story with a trilogy set after Return of the Jedi, which was an area nobody had been allowed to write in before. Took Lucasfilm a year or so to come up with, to decide to go ahead with this. They told the Bantam editors, let's do it. So we're contract, find us an author. The Bantam editors sat together around a table, made a list of authors in their stable who they thought could write Star Wars, sent our names and samples of our writing out to Lucasfilm, and I got this. It was a Tuesday afternoon phone call from my agent early November of 1989 saying, Tim, we've got a very interesting offer here. So we talked about it for 45 minutes or so. I told him I'd give my answer the next day, and I went off and panicked. Because this was a chance to jumpstart my career in a way I never would have imagined. It was a chance to play in a universe I'd always loved. It was also my chance to fall flat on my face in front of millions of Star Wars fans who would hate me forever. I know that sounds like that would never happen.
Not this fan.
No. Because I needed to be able to capture the feel of Star Wars. Every universe has its own feel. Star Wars does not feel like Star Trek, does not feel like Firefly. There's a feel to each one. And if I could not capture that and capture the characters, it would not be Star Wars, it would be an adventure of two guys named Han and Luke, which would be a waste of everybody's time, mine and the readers and the publishers. By the next day I had enough story, I thought, okay, I can write a trilogy. I can develop a trilogy with this. So it was not a what made me want to write in Star Wars, it was the opportunity was handed on that platinum platter. And I've enjoyed it enough that I've now got 15 Star Wars books instead of 3. If it wasn't a good experience, I would have stopped after the first set. So yeah, it's and I want to continue writing it because it's fun, getting to do interesting things with characters set in a universe that I still love, and it's just one of the greatest things for me to be doing at this point.
The second part of this question, so was Thrawn an archetype, something in the background already for a project, or did that come from, I'm writing Star Wars now?
Yeah, no, I typically don't fill in the map any more than I need to, figuratively as well as literally. As people have asked, did you already know about the Chiss ascendancy when I started writing that trilogy? Well, I had the little bits I already put in here and there, but I hadn't bothered to develop anything because there's no point wasting time and brain power on something that may never happen. Once I get a commission, then I start developing everything. But Thrawn was not something set in the back of my mind. I mean, I'd written good tacticians before. David Lathe in the Black Collar series was that kind of person, but not the same kind of character that Thrawn was going to be. So yeah, he was developed for those books.
Thank you.
From your perspective, having the trilogy comes out, and that not only restarts an interest in Star Wars in the early 90s, but that led to, movie events without movies in publishing. We've Shadows of the Empire and going forward. What was your perspective kind of helping to lay that foundation and getting in on the ground floor of that momentum building in publishing?
Bear in mind that no one knew if these books would sell. They didn't know if Star Wars fans were out there, if this thing would fall flat on its face. There was no thought of this is the beginning of a new legacy of sort. This is, please let it sell enough to burn out the advance for me and not drive Bantam into bankruptcy or something. I actually, in the middle of the night, at one point before Heir to the Empire came out, was thinking, I wonder how many libraries there are in the United States. If they each take 2 copies, because I didn't know either. So there was no sense of being poised on something great. This was an experiment. Do the fans exist? I think the answer is yes. But yeah, it developed that way, but we didn't know it at the start.
I go here, 1, right behind 2, and 3 right here. And I'll look at that side of my comments. Go ahead. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Just to kind of piggybacking off of that, you're often credited, and I would not. The reason your books kind of revitalized and revamped interest in Star Wars is because you do such a good job of capturing that universe and, like you said, the way that it feels that's different from Star Trek and Firefly and those. What advice would you give to other writers who want to write an already established?
Question, what advice would I give to writers wanting to write an established universe? For the most part, you're not going to be invited into someone else's IP, intellectual property, until you've made a track record of your own. That you've proven you can write good stories in your own universe, put words together, get them in on time. That's a big thing in publishing. So you need to build up your own track record, your own repertoire of books, stories, things you've had published. Once you can prove to them that you know what you're doing, then you can start trying to get into someone else's universe. But typically, they don't want to take a chance on someone who's completely unproven. Because for most part, certainly in Star Wars, they've got X number of slots for books. If they give one to somebody who then fails to turn it in or turn in something worthwhile that they can publish, they've now got a hole in their publishing schedule, which they may have trouble filling. So they want to know that you can write good stories on time. So you need to work on your own material first, and then build that up.
Would you suggest starting with shorter material so that you can submit to various other like magazines, contests, things like that?
Well, that's how I started. There are some people, I mean, stories have their own natural length. I can do short stories, I can do novels, I can do trilogies. There's some people whose ideas come only in tetralogy form. You know, this idea cannot be chunk into a short story. It's going to be an epic fantasy, epic science fiction, whatever. If you can write short stories, I think that's a good way to start, because you can, a magazine is more willing to take a chance on a 5,000-word story from a newcomer than a publisher is with a 100,000-word novel. So if you can write short stories, I think that's the best way to get known, not just to the public, but also to the publishing establishment. If you can't, you may have to go the self-publishing route, which has worked very well for a lot of people, but it is a lot harder when you are trying to get the noise-to-signal ratio in the internet is rather high, shall we say, and you need to be able to get noticed. It's easier, I think, with an established publisher, because you pick up a book by Joe Smith, and somebody has paid good money for this, so it's probably, at least somebody thought it was decent, and it's worth my taking a risk on it. On the internet, certainly self-publishing, it's going to be more of a challenge to persuade people that you're worth reading. So, people ask, how do we break into publishing? I have no idea. I did it 40 years ago or 30 years ago, and I have no idea how it works now. But yeah, I think in principle, short fiction is a good way to start.
Let's go right back here, number 2.
Between the characterization of Thrawn and Legends material and what is now new canon, what, in your mind, if any, are the differences in his characterization?
Differences between Thrawn and Legends and Thrawn and canon, as far as I'm concerned, there aren't any. The differences would be a bit of change with age and experience. More importantly, are is the fact that in the new stuff, he's under constraints. In the original Thrawn trilogy, he was essentially head of the Empire. He's not under anyone's control. In Rebels, in the Imperial trilogy, and in Ascendancy, he's got people over him, people who can tell him things he has to do, things he doesn't have to do or can't do. So he's constrained a lot more in those. But I see the character as being basically the same. I'm certainly writing him in such a way that it straddles both Legends and canon.
And the third question right back here. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, out of the characters that you introduced to Star Wars, Thrawn is, of course, my favorite. But my second favorite is Mara Jade. Do you know, or can you tell us, if there are any plans to bring her back into canon?
I think the key answer was if they want you to write.
Okay, first of all, I have no actual knowledge of anything, so clear that up. Lucasfilm is very paranoid about stuff they're doing getting out, and I've been told Disney is worse. So they are not telling, I didn't even know there was something showing up at the end of Bad Batch until people started telling me about it. So well, it's a minor thing only, but it's minor only, but it is another nod to Legends. That being said, we have periodically nudged Del Rey to see, can I write a new Mara Jade canon story? And the answer has always been someplace between no and heck no.
Oh.
What that tells me is they don't want me messing with her character at this point. That can either mean they have definite plans for her, or it can mean they have no plans, but sometime before the heat death of the universe, they might. Or anything in between there. All I can say for certain is they won't let me deal with the character. I would like to think that the people who see how Thrawn is making them money would be looking at the other stuff I've done. What else has the Zahn guy done that it might bring us more money? And Mara would be top of the list for that. Lucasfilm, as you have noticed, has been trying to bring a lot more strong women into Star Wars, starting with Leia, of course, and then with Jyn in Rogue One, and then Rey in the sequels. Mara isn't exactly like any of them. It wouldn't be a duplicate, because she was an Imperial agent, and a very good one, which means she brings a skill set to her whatever she's going to be doing that none of these other characters has. Plus the fact that it's going to be an interesting dynamic because there will be people in the New Republic who will never trust her at all because of her background. That sets up an interesting conflicts and such that her core group of people, Luke, Han, Leia, will trust her, but some people won't, and they will be obstructionists all over the place. So it would not be like, okay, Mara is duplicating this other character. She doesn't. The same as Thrawn doesn't duplicate any other Imperial character they have. So there's no reason they couldn't bring her in. Again, I don't know if they have plans or what. As soon as they announce it to me, if it is followed by the words, would you like to write a new, the answer will be yes. So yes, I'd like to see Mara back, but that's entirely up to people way above my pay grade who are not talking to me.
Let's go to this side of the room. I got one in the green shirt, two right there. We'll go with those two first. Go ahead.
Are there any connections that you have or that you can talk about between the Ascendancy and the First Order, given that Thrawn provided information to the Empire, if that was used as they withdrew and became the First Order?
The timeline, the question was connection between the Chiss Ascendancy and the First Order. At the moment I'm writing, the First Order doesn't exist yet. Palpatine presumably has not sent them out into the unknown regions. In the future, there's every possibility they would run into each other. I have some ideas, small ideas about what that might look like. But again, I'm not going to bother filling in that map until I get, would you like to work in this timeline with these groups? And the answer is yes. Then will also be yes, please. And then I will flesh out some of the thoughts I've been having. But I see no reason why they couldn't run into each other. And that would probably be not very pleasant for the First Order.
Right.
Just saying.
I would.
Let's go back to the conversation.
My question, so in Star Wars there's a whole lot of different things, like different kinds of theories and everything and all that. I know that with Thrawn now being reintroduced and all that into canon and all that, that a lot of people are, like speculating and all that, just all over the place of, oh, does Thrawn have like any input in this or that, these other stories and all that are out and around. And at least my question to you is, at least for you, do you see those and like, oh, oh, that's fair, or maybe, possibly?
I don't look at any fan fiction. I don't listen to fan theories particularly because my editor and agent and publishers get very nervous because if something I've got in the works also coincidentally shows up in something else, if Disney and Lucasfilm have deep pockets, you'll find a lawyer who will be willing to sue. I mean, somebody claimed that George stole the Ewoks from them. So I don't look at any of these other things. I focus on what I want, what I'm thinking Thrawn does, and how his interactions with other people are. The speculation everywhere, I mean, people are welcome to do it, but I don't look at or comment on other people's material.
What other questions? Let's go right here. Yeah.
My question for, what inspired, how did you come up with the novel? When did you know or decide that Thrawn was going to control life so far?
Spoilers. I had the early November of '89 is when I got the offer. By Thanksgiving, I had the basics of the story. So that was, I wanted the Nogri in there just as something partly for Leia to show her diplomatic skills and to show what the Empire had, some of the things the Empire had been doing. The end of each of the characters, I had that set before Thanksgiving, so 3-4 weeks in there. So I knew how that was going to work. The way you defeat Thrawn, and I appreciate they did this in Rebels as well, you give him something he doesn't know, or you give him something he can't control. And that is how you defeat him. If you give him unlimited knowledge and unlimited control, it's almost impossible to beat him. Because he would, if you find some fluke, he will simply withdraw and come back later at a different time. So all of that was said. Odd but possibly interesting story. At Thanksgiving, we were meeting a couple of friends who I had shared my outline with, and we were having dinner at it was a Sizzler or something, and we were going to talk about the outline. And suddenly realized we're coming from a convention up the road. There are fans all around us. How do we talk about this? And we invented a code on the spot. We got brother and sister, that's Luke and Leia, friend. Thrawn and Mari could use those names without any problem because nobody knew anything about those. But we had a whole code. I don't remember what Lando was, and Wedge, but yeah, we invented it as we went along. And thought later on, people had been listening to what we were actually saying. Would have been interesting. So yeah, the idea of what was going to end, the end of the trilogy, was set from the start.
Yes, right here.
I was wondering if there was any other science fiction universes or franchises that you haven't wrote for that you'd like to write for.
The question was other science fiction franchises from the doctor up here.
No pressure.
No, actually, I enjoyed a lot of Doctor Who. In particular, I liked I grew up with Tom Baker, that's my first introduction. And then very much like the David Tennant. Someplace mid Matt Smith, I think they started running out of ideas, and the story started getting a little bit sloppier. But some of the stuff, especially lost their names now, the couple. Yeah. Amy and Rory, right.
The Pawns.
Had an interest, yeah, the Pawns had an interesting dynamic because it was a loving married couple dealing with the doctor. I thought some of that stuff was very inspired. I have heard since then that you need a British passport in order to write for Doctor Who. The rationale, or that's the amusing way of saying that they don't want it overrun with Americans, so it's kept to Brits to write there. So that would say probably never. On the other hand, it's only a matter of time, I think, before Disney buys the BBC. At which point I've got a shot.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What has kind of been some of your inspiration for different characters, kind of some of the minor characters, kind of when you use them, when you don't use them, and kind of how you have developed them yourself compared to, say, from the movies or other novels?
The inspiration for minor characters is more where they're needed. I wanted somebody for Mara Jade to work with, and so Talon Card got invented. I saw him as what Han might have been like if he hadn't dropped into that cantina for a drink that day. Someone who's got an organization, is very loyal to them, whether he'll admit it or not, has an ethical core, whether he'll admit that or not. Other characters, for the Ascendancy trilogy, Aralani was already there, so I wanted to work her relationship with Thrawn right from the beginning, that friendship and growing there. Various other characters, this character doesn't like Thrawn, this character hates Thrawn, this one doesn't, appreciates him and is willing to work with him. All of that, the characters who Thrawn will interact with are a lot of the fun of the challenge of writing new Thrawn material. How will people see him? Will they see him as an asset to be used? Will they see him as, you're smarter than I am, so I hate you? Which is kind of a stupid attitude, but it unfortunately is very human. But I invent them as they are needed for the storyline. Some come out in the outline, others are invented along the way. The character of Garm Bel Iblis in Dark Force Rising he was never in the original outline, but as I started to do a more complete outline of that book after I finished Heir of the Empire, I suddenly realized Han doesn't have a lot to do in this book. Okay, how can I give Han something to do? And Bel Iblis was the guy I came up with to be Han's foil and to work his part of the storyline. So it's typically what character is needed, and then what kind of personality you want to give them. Ghent, I needed a slicer, and a guy who's completely oblivious to everything except his computer work. None of us know anybody like that at all. But again, he's some people's favorite, which is kind of cool. Oh yeah, it was Mal. Okay, here's the code you wanted me to break. I mention to people when I'm doing writing classes and such, your characters have to work with your storyline. If your story is about a potential nuclear disaster at a nuclear power plant, your main character is probably not a cocktail waitress. On the other hand, if your story is about an alien who actually accidentally leaves an artifact as part of a tip, your protagonist very well may be a cocktail waitress. So you fill the story with the characters that make it work, and you tweak your plot to make the characters work in it. it's all a bootstrapping back and forth. So yeah, minor characters get thrown in as needed, usually as I come up with the need for one.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. We'll go here and I'll go to you, okay? So one.
Hey, there's a YouTube channel right now that I don't know if you've seen it. They've been doing a kind of CGI computer graphic of your Heir of the Empire.
I've heard of that. I think I've seen a bit of that, yeah.
I was wondering, have you guys seen it yet, or work?
I know that it's the animated Heir to the Empire. I try to avoid too much anything that's non-canon just because it's safer that way. If I happen to hit on something somebody else did for their story or their video, it's much easier if I can say in court, no, I didn't know about this in advance. I know I didn't know because I don't ever look at these things. So I've had a little couple of clips put on Facebook and such that I've looked at, but I don't want to look at anything extensive. But it looked like they've done a good job. And I know they were getting a lot of accolades from people. So it's just that when I stop writing Star Wars books, I'm going to look at all this stuff. But until then, I've got to protect myself, Lucasfilm, Disney, my editor, got to protect everybody by just, no, I don't know anything about that, and I can't.
Last question, I believe. Rebecca, yes.
So how much research do you have to do when you're coming up with a smaller organization, top of the card versus off-the-cuff creation? And what is the single most interesting thing in your search history as a result of research you've done?
Your browser history? I don't know if we need to go there.
Sorry, the first part was the...
How much research?
Oh, research. I try to do as little research as possible because it takes time away from actually writing. With anything Star Wars, you've got to at least have some idea of what's going on in the era you're writing. That's why the Ascendancy has been great, because I'm making that up out of whole cloth, basically. I will look into various things. I will, everything gets run past the story group, which helps because they can flag any problems. For example, the short story that got put as part of the opening part of the book Thrawn, I just adapted the story I'd written before. The story group came back and said, there are no X-Wings in this part of the timeline, but here's a fighter that they do have that will work, and X-Wings start being introduced. I'm sorry, TIE fighters. So TIE fighters are not available, but this is what the Empire is using. Midway through your book, TIEs start being introduced, you can start introducing them there as well. So a lot of that stuff is already coming from story group and the Lucasfilm people, which helps a lot. Probably the most interesting thing would be the looking up Harriers and actual U.S. military stuff if I'm adapting it for something else I'm using. So again, I try to make up as much as I can because it's easier. But when I do need something, yes, the internet is very useful, and there are pictures of cats.
I want to thank you for your time today. I hope everybody... Don't forget, Timothy will be here all weekend.
Yeah.
So come out, if you haven't, I know about half of you have already been, stop by and say hi.
It's table 2238 for anybody who wants to come by. If you've got other questions, come by and ask them. Happy to answer questions and such. So 2238, it's Lucasfilm, THX 1138, but praise those. The ones to choose.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. So guys, thank you for joining me. I would love to stop this and record it, but I don't know what to do. Krista, can you help me? Girls, when you stop, no, the live, but I want to save it. How I do it?
How do you save it?
So I stop it, but I want to save it in some way. How can I do it?
Stop it, it actually asks you if you want to save it, so I think you have to go to stop it first.
But are you sure that you will ask me? Are you sure 100%?
My phone's dead, I can't.
Guys, you can see we are absolutely unable to do all this, but we will try to save this because he said great things about Eli. And Solnova, if you joined just now, please listen what he said about Im and Ezra and Eli that I recorded because it's gold.
She
Let's
said that
see.
when you stop it, it'll ask you to save it.
It
as
will.
an IG video.
So can I stop it here on the corner?
The X? Back up.
Milan, no, the Gen Z. I'll pause. Is this
Yeah.
there? Is this thing?
Yeah.
So when you stop
And
it,
it should save it as an IGTV video.
Are you sure you want to play video?
Yeah.
Are you doing video?
Yeah.